Uranus in the 7th house is one of the most intellectually stimulating and socially disruptive positions in a natal chart. Because the 7th house governs our one-on-one relationships, legal contracts, and open enemies, the presence of Uranus, the planet of revolution, eccentricity, and sudden change, acts like a lightning bolt to the traditional concept of partnership. The architecture of freedom. At its core, Uranus in the 7th house represents a deep-seated need for autonomy within connection. Individuals with this placement often find the traditional white picket fence model of marriage or partnership suffocating. There is a psychological drive to redefine what it means to be a we, often resulting in relationships that look unconventional to outsiders. This might manifest as living in separate houses while married, choosing long-distance arrangements, or pursuing open dynamics that prioritize individual freedom over social conformity. The 7th house also describes what we project onto others. Frequently, a person with this placement may not realize they possess a rebellious spirit, instead attracting partners who are Uranian, people who are geniuses, rebels, social outcasts, or highly unstable. By drawing in these eccentric characters, the individual is forced to confront their own latent need for excitement and change. The rhythm of sudden shifts. Stability is rarely the primary theme here. Instead, the relational life is characterized by sudden beginnings and abrupt endings. Uranus does not do slow burns, it operates in flashes. You might meet a soulmate in a grocery store aisle and be engaged within a week, only to find the spark extinguished just as quickly when the newness wears off or the partner attempts to impose a restrictive routine. This placement suggests that the other serves as a catalyst for personal awakening. Relationships are not just for companionship, they are for evolution. Every partner serves as a mirror that reflects a different, perhaps untapped, version of the self. This can lead to a revolving door of partners in early life until the individual learns to integrate their own need for independence rather than seeking it vicariously through chaotic others. The gift of objectivity. One of the most beautiful expressions of Uranus in the 7th house is the ability to view relationships through a lens of radical honesty and objectivity. These individuals are often ahead of their time, stripping away the layers of societal expectation to see the raw humanity in their partners. They are the friends who offer the most detached, yet brilliant, advice on conflict because they aren't bogged down by how things should be. In a professional sense, this placement is excellent for those who work in consulting, astrology, technology, or mediation. The ability to bring a fresh eyes approach to one-on-one interactions allows them to solve problems that others find intractable. They thrive in partnerships that are intellectually stimulating and constantly evolving. Navigating the shadow. The challenge of Uranus in the 7th house lies in the fear of intimacy. Because Uranus prizes detachment, there can be a tendency to keep partners at arm's length to avoid being consumed or controlled. This can manifest as a coldness or a habit of picking fights just to create space. Furthermore, because the 7th house also rules open enemies, this placement can indicate sudden, unexpected legal battles or public disputes. These conflicts often arise when the individual, or the opponent, feels their personal liberty has been infringed upon. Integration and evolution. To master this placement, one must embrace the paradox of the independent partner. The goal is not to avoid commitment, but to build a commitment based on the truth of who both people are, rather than the roles they are expected to play. When a person with Uranus in the 7th house stops looking for a stable anchor and starts looking for a co-pilot for a wild ride, the energy shifts from chaos to brilliance. Success comes when they find a partner who is just as interested in the future as they are, someone who understands that the strongest bond is the one that allows both people to breathe. While a natal placement of Uranus in the 7th house describes your factory settings for partnership, the transit of Uranus through the 7th house is a different beast entirely. It is a 7-year cycle of radical restructuring. If the natal placement is a blueprint for an unconventional house, the transit is the actual earthquake that levels the old structure so a more authentic one can be built. The call for liberation. When Uranus begins its journey across your descendant, the cusp of the 7th house, the primary theme is individuation through relationship. This transit often begins with a sudden, restless itch. You may wake up one day feeling that the walls of your long-term partnership are closing in, even if nothing wrong has happened. The soul is demanding more room to breathe, and if you don't consciously claim that space, you will likely attract people or events that force it upon you. For those in stagnant or repressive unions, this transit often acts as the great liberator. It isn't uncommon for relationships to end abruptly under this influence, often initiated by the partner or by a sudden external event that reveals an irreparable fracture. However, it's important to understand that Uranus doesn't destroy healthy things, it destroys the masks we wear to keep the peace. The magnetism of the unusual. If you are single during this transit, your type will likely undergo a total revolution. You might find yourself intensely attracted to people you would have dismissed in the past, the eccentric, the foreigner, the rebel, or the genius. These Uranian figures enter your life to act as mirrors, showing you the parts of your own personality that you've kept locked away. These connections are often electric, characterized by instant, soul-shaking chemistry, but they can be notoriously unstable. They exist to wake you up, not necessarily to provide a lifelong anchor. The lesson here is to enjoy the lightning bolt without trying to bottle it. Redefining the contract. For those in strong, flexible relationships, this transit doesn't have to mean divorce. Instead, it demands a renegotiation of terms. This is the time when couples might decide to live apart together, pursue different career paths that require travel, or explore non-traditional lifestyles. The relationship must evolve into a partnership of two wholes rather than two halves. This transit also governs open enemies and legal matters. Expect the unexpected in negotiations. A legal case might take a sharp turn based on a piece of evidence that comes out of thin air, or a professional rival might suddenly offer a brilliant, albeit strange, truce. The key to navigating the 7th house transit is high-level flexibility. The more you dig your heels into the way things have always been, the more painful the Uranian lightning strike becomes. The final integration. By the time Uranus leaves the 7th house, you will likely have a completely different philosophy on human connection. You will have learned that intimacy does not require the sacrifice of identity. The 7-year itch associated with this transit is actually a 7-year quest for authenticity. You emerge from this period less dependent on the approval of others and more grounded in your own truth. You learn that the only relationships worth keeping are the ones where you are free to change, grow, and be surprised, both by your partner and by yourself. To go deeper into the Uranus 7th house transit, we have to look at the psychological underworld of this movement. This isn't just about breakups or meeting a quirky stranger, it is a profound journey of reclaiming the shadow. In astrology, the 7th house is where we project the qualities we don't think we possess. When Uranus hits this point, it forces a return of the repressed. The projection mirror. During this transit, you may find yourself saying, "My partner has become so erratic and unreliable," or "I keep meeting people who are emotionally unavailable and obsessed with their own freedom." From a psychological standpoint, Uranus is actually highlighting your own hidden hunger for rebellion. If you have spent decades being the reliable one, the stable one, or the sacrificial lamb, Uranus will bring people into your orbit who act out the wildness you've suppressed. The chaos you see in your partners is often a manifestation of the internal revolution you are too afraid to start yourself. The unreliability of others is a cosmic nudge for you to stop relying so heavily on external structures and start relying on your own internal compass. Uranus uses shock as a diagnostic tool. If a relationship or a contract shatters instantly during this transit, it is usually because it was built on a foundation of false security. We often stay in situations because they are comfortable, but Uranus views comfort as a slow death for the soul. The shocking events, the sudden discovery of a secret, the partner suddenly wanting a break, or an unexpected legal loophole, are designed to show you exactly where you were lying to yourself. It is a violent but necessary clarity. Once the dust settles, you realize that the security you lost was actually a cage you were paying rent to live in. Intellectual and professional partnerships. Beyond romance, this transit radically alters how you collaborate. In business, you might find yourself drawn to disruptive industries, tech, AI, social activism, or alternative healing. The old way, hierarchical, predictable, and based on long-term loyalty. The Uranus way, network-based, project-oriented, and based on intellectual synergy. You might break away from a stable firm to become a freelance consultant, or form a power duo with someone who is your polar opposite. The seventh house is the house of the other, and Uranus demands that this other be someone who challenges your brain, not just someone who fills a seat. Somatic and nervous system effects. Because Uranus rules the nervous system and electricity, a seventh house transit can actually feel physically buzzing. When you are in the presence of others, you might feel more wired or anxious than usual. This is relational static. It happens because your energetic boundaries are thinning to allow new types of people in. It is common to experience insomnia triggered by relationship processing. Sudden flashes of insight about your childhood conditioning while talking to a partner. A fight or flight response when someone tries to make long-term plans with you. Mastering the lightning. The secret to surviving this transit is to refuse to cling. In Zen philosophy, there is the idea of the open hand. If you try to clench your fist around a person or a status quo during a Uranus transit, you will get burned by the friction. If you keep your hand open, the energy can flow through you without causing damage. By the end of this 7-year cycle, the version of commitment you hold will be vastly more sophisticated. You will realize that the only way to truly keep someone is to give them the total freedom to leave. When they stay under those conditions, you finally experience the Uranian ideal, a partnership of two liberated souls. Subscribe, like, and share.